My name's Toby Hoon. Thanks for the introduction. I've been at Mediate about 9 months as CIO. And prior to that, I was at Tesco's for 4 years and had a great opportunity at Tesco's to work on virtually all the different e-commerce businesses within Tesco, including the rollout of sort of physical products like kiosks and the Huddle tablet, and the integration of services and products onto the Huddle tablet. So really, I hope I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool e-commerce guy, but I've got quite a bit of experience. I've got digital experience going back about 15 years, where I was involved in a dot-com venture that didn't quite survive the first dot-com boom, like I'm sure some other people have experienced that. So just a little bit about Immediate. I'm not sure how many people know about Immediate. So we are, first and foremost, we describe ourselves, let me do the, sorry, I'll get there in the end. First and foremost, we describe ourselves as a specialist content and platform company. I'm going to talk about that, I'll give you a bit of an insight into Immediate. Then I'll talk about our platform strategy, what platform means to us, our technical approach, and then hopefully there'll be a few questions at the end. So having come from a company that had a big brand portfolio and a big brand presence like Tesco's, I found it quite difficult to understand how you resonated with customers when you had all these many brands and how you did anything together. What's really powerful about the Immediate strategy is we're focused on brands that really deeply engage customers. So I mean, you can see on the list there, the big brand for us that has the biggest presence, of course, is the Radio Times. It's the #1 premium magazine in the UK. We have a great affinity with the BBC, so we have titles from the BBC, which again create great loyalty with customers. We have a leading position in youth and children's, and over the last couple of years we've moved more and more into the transactional space. So you'll see there's a platform there called, a brand there called Hitched. Hitched is a weddings marketplace platform, allowing you to plan your wedding and allowing you to get access to services and goods associated with that. And then we also have, in the bottom left, a product called Jewelry Maker. Jewelry Maker is our TV shopping channel, and I'll come on to that in a minute. What do we mean by engaged audiences? So the story about Immediate is not complete if you don't understand really kind of where we're going with this deep engagement. We have deep engagement across a whole range of different kind of categories of customers. So, 10 million people that watch TV, regularly and routinely. 6 million cyclists. 1.5 million brides that are at any point in time going through their wedding journey. You can see there's deep engagement here. And what I mean by deep engagement is we have customers that come back frequently and consume our products. We have a trust built on the fact that our products aren't overtly commercial. And it's because we tend to focus on those kind of brands that are more hobbyist, more craft-like, more club-like, let's just say. And that provides a real focus around deep engagement with customers. We also have a really scaled audience. Let's go to that. We sell 74 million magazines in the UK and abroad. We have 37 million uniques every year on our digital platforms. We are a big scale business in the publishing space, and that big scale comes from all the brands, but each of the individual brands plays a very important part in engaging with customers. So let me just talk a little bit more before I come onto platform about digital. Our story around digital has been pretty phenomenal. The company was formed about 4 to 5 years ago, and in that time our digital growth pattern digital revenues have grown massively. This year we're scheduled to nudge above £40 million worth of revenue. That's roughly going to get us to about 20% of the mix in the company, coming from a really low base where we were virtually all about print. Equally, we've changed the dynamic. I mean, all of you in the publishing industry know how difficult digital advertising can be and how it's been recently. We're very heavily focused towards transactional revenues, and you can probably see that from the pie chart on the right-hand side. We started out with a position that was about 75 to 25, well, 70 to 25, in favor of digital advertising. Now our model is flipped. We're more like, it's a bit small on here, but I think it's about 24% around digital advertising and far more around transactional revenues. And that transactional side of the business is a growing story. as we've acquired brands that are transactional, and as we've extended some of our brands to include transactional elements. And that produces quite a lot of challenges from a tech front. We talk about specialist content. If I talk quickly about the platform side, that has some uniqueness in terms of what we've been trying to do over the last few years to extend our brands to include more and complex business models. Primarily, we're a print business. We're very focused on print. You know, it creates a huge amount of revenue for us. As I said, the Radio Times sells an enormous number of magazines, and we don't want to forget that. A lot of our first engagement with customers is around print magazines. So we are a print business as much as anything else. But we have, over the last few years, like everyone else in the industry, moved into ways to get our product out there in a digital form. If you look at something like BBC History, it's always consistently in the top 5 around digital editions in the UK. If you look at the website, all of our sites are now responsive. In fact, that's driven the change in behaviour with a lot of our customers. Things like a product we have called Made for Mums. It's a brand that we have in the parenting space. I mean, 85 to 90% of that audience is now mobile. It's just so much more convenient for them. We also have our own dedicated in-house video team, and the video team complement, content, but also look quite heavily now at the commercial opportunities associated with advertising. And if you look at our cycling brands are very heavily focused on things like video news now, associated with, the big events going on now. So anyone who follows cycling will know the Giro d'Italia is on at the moment. But the most important thing for us is how do we get ourselves into a diversified revenue space? How do we diversify those revenues? We've bought a product called Hitched, which I just talked about. Hitched is a marketplace. So Hitched allows wedding venues to list and for people to search for wedding venues. Quite an important part of the wedding planning journey. It's one of the first things a bride and bridegroom or prospective couple will choose in their wedding planning journey. And then off the back of that, we're extending it with florists and photographers and all the other things that you get when you need to do a wedding. We've also got a lot of transactional sides of things, and increasingly we're integrating with full-on e-commerce models. And I'll come and talk about Jewelry Maker in a minute, but it's a full e-commerce business. And then, we have really deep insights. The good thing about specialist content is you get not just deeply engaged audiences, but you get deeply engaged insights about customers as well. So take the cycling space. I come from a supermarket world where there is so much information about so much information out there about what customers want from supermarkets. There's so much research done. In the cycling space, there's very, very little. It's amazing how little information there is on the marketplace as a whole. And of course, that's a real opportunity for any publisher in that specialist space. Just a slightly deeper dive. On the digital content front, we've been very, very much focused on getting out there from a publishing side onto mobile. As with a lot of companies, our strategy is definitely mobile first. But we've looked at ways to integrate content and subscriptions to add value to the customer and also to add value for us. So if you go onto something like Gardener's World now, there's a section of Gardener's World called Secret Garden. Secret Garden allows us to charge customers a premium on subscriptions to get add value content around gardening. Our customers are really loving that. There's 30,000 people have signed up to it in the last 2 months. And it's primarily based on the fact that the content they get about gardening is quality content, and they're willing to pay for it. And it reduces our reliance, obviously, on advertising. We have, it's true to say our strategy has been very much around building platforms that support publishing and content. And we have very good and well-designed platforms that have been around for a number of years now. We've been able to, off the back of that, scale out and meet the demands of our audiences. So, again, Made for Mums is a good example. Made for Mums UVs have doubled in a year. Radio Times is now hitting, October last year on digital, 1 month we hit 9 million unique visitors. So, that scale has come very rapidly, and our platforms are able to cope with that. If you look at audiences, as I said, we have a database that holds 10 million subscribers. That goes way back, very valuable to us. If you look at advertising, we have 37 million unique browsers on our DMP. We are pushing ahead aggressively with native advertising like everyone else, programmatic, header bidding, etc. I have to whiz through a little bit so we get to questions. On e-commerce and transactions, you know, if I focus on that, TV shopping is a really big part of our business. We're able to film live over half the day and then do playback offline. We have broadcast facilities, we have our own studio. We are able to do live auctions, variable pricing. We're able to take payments through call center, web, apps, you name it. And we support the full end-to-end life cycle around commerce, including, you know, product ingestion, our own warehousing, our own fulfillment, etc. To be honest, that's a full stack. That's kind of like the envy of a lot of e-commerce models. And it's something that we really look to take advantage of in the future with our other brands. Hitched, as I said, is very much about listings, about creating a marketplace of different suppliers. We've extended the venue side of the business to include other suppliers now. We've introduced variable pricing. We've introduced a lot of B2B tooling, because what we realize is once you're in that kind of relationship, you need to give back as much as you take from suppliers. And we charge people differently for placings and listings on our marketplace. And then you take something like e-commerce in general around our other brands. Radio Times is a good example. We're able to take Radio Times and use it as a brand extension to sell travel, money products, and you know, other things like that, even things that are very particular to the Radio Times. It's amazing how people find an affinity with things like Roberts Radios and stuff like that. There's quite a lot that you can see that the Radio Times brand extends to, but that goes for other products as well. The challenge, though, and I think the challenge, you know, from a tech perspective, is how do we keep this up? How do we get pace and how do we keep the scale going? We are, to be fair, a collection of individual brands, and the platform has built up around those individual brands with some consolidation. But the challenge going forward is to get that pace and scale up. And I'm sure that's probably pretty true of quite a lot of your companies. So the first thing really is around what are our challenges? Our challenges really are, as I said, we are actively moving towards commerce. We are seeing scale growing exponentially, you know, and we are really struggling now, or we will struggle to keep the pace up if we don't integrate more fully. So rather than looking at things from a brand perspective, we're turning it around and looking at it more from a individual, you know, from a functional view. Digital publishing is a key part of our strategy. As you've seen, the growth is big there. We've developed lots of multiple best-of-breed products. And we've also looked at bespoking customer experiences. So, you know, if you go onto the Radio Times, it's a totally different experience to going on to something like Cycling Plus, one of our cycling brands. We have to somehow challenge that, because it's caused, you know, over time, if you go down that path of looking at individual brands and dedicating resource to individual brands, you will get a very fragmented approach over time. You'll find it harder to merge in acquisitions. And equally, you'll find that some of the smaller brands don't really get the attention that they deserve to grow, because they're not getting the resource, because it's always sucked up by the bigger brands. From a commerce side, as I've said, we've got a number of commerce brands, and I think Jewelry Maker is a good case in point. But Jewelry Maker at the moment is a standalone business with a standalone technology stack. And the challenge for us is how to deal with that. The challenge for us also is to see how you extend things like product and product catalog, a really important part of e-commerce. What you'll find is a lot of e-commerce platforms that are built up natively by people, you know, by individual companies, are very bespoke to the products they started to sell in the first place. And we have to take that and turn it into something that's more agnostic, that's more generic. And then, you know, on demand and scale, you know, as I said already, we've got a big thing about growth, but there are other things that come in around e-commerce that traditional publishing doesn't have to encounter. One really is the customer journey side of things. You know, so for instance, we've been putting things like promotions through our digital publishing brands, and seeing massive uptake in the products that we're getting through Jewelry Maker. But then the warehouse itself has no throttling mechanism to cope with that. It's a sort of basic e-commerce rules. You know, you put out promotions and you really, really want people to come to it, but then there's physical limitations in your e-commerce model that you have to take account of when you do that. So we're addressing this through an initiative we call Fabric. And it's quite different to the way media have looked at things in the past. So we've stood back, we've looked at the business and said, look, rather than individual brands, we're about acquiring and engaging audiences. We're about publishing and getting our product out to customers, whether that's TV, whether that's print, whether that's digital. We're about great content creation, giving people great tools to create content. It's a funny thing. It's like, I don't know whether this is part of the market, this is the way it works in the marketplace, but I found at Immediate there's a big focus on getting product out to customers, and almost the internal editorial staff gets second place in terms of the tools that they use, and are not treated in the same way as customers. Obviously, we have to keep going with advertising, but the big growth areas I've said for us is around subscriptions, marketing, and commerce. And we're doing this quite differently. So rather than setting up a project, and I those of you in the tech industry for a long time, you've set up a project to do something strategic, and then everyone else sits on the side and waits for the strategic project to come along, and then sort of has to sort of migrate across. We're doing this slightly differently. We split the teams up, made them functional, and we've given everyone a goal to contribute towards the whole. So every single team in a media, in the tech and product world, is contributing towards the future strategy. Our strategy is based on 5 key building blocks. The first one is publishing. So look, we know that we need to standardize. We have many, many different products out there around the publishing world. And then first and foremost, it's to get your product out to customers, whether your product is an e-commerce product or whether it's a digital content-based product. To my mind, I think the commerce platforms is no different really to publishing magazine content. At the end of the day, when I look at the way Tesco's does things, virtually everything you see in an equivalent of a category page or a landing page or whatever, most of it's around marketing. Even the rankings you get of things like products are increasingly around marketing, ranked for relevancy for you or ranked for relevancy for whatever makes the most margin. In my mind, you have to treat your publishing platform as agnostic of what the business model is behind it. So we're standardizing on that, and we're standardizing on at the moment we're standardizing on WordPress. It's powering a lot of the sites out there in the world. We've seen massive uptake from the editorial teams in terms of the tools available, and it certainly beats having to invent everything ourselves. Where we do look to see uniqueness is around our data and around our database services. So what I mean by that is if you took something like Radio Times, we focus heavily on things like listings as something that is unique to us. It's unique to the Radio Times proposition. And also, things like on cycling, the sports database that we have there, the reviews we have about Cycling Kit, the sports events, the rider profiles, those sorts of things are unique to what we do. Of course, our content is unique, but the technical platform on which it sits should not be. So the strategy going forward is around a core publishing platform based on WordPress with service-oriented architecture plugging in database services around things like, unique things like sports and listings. As I said, we've also got a link in commerce. So by having a single front end or single platform front end, we're able to plug in lots of different business models around commerce. But as I said before, at the moment, we're very verticalized. We have a marketplace product, we have a commerce product, we have a TV shopping product, but they're all tied into their individual brands, and they're all in slightly different technologies, and they're all architected quite differently. The challenge for us now is to take out the key things that make the commerce journey work, things like basket, payment, fulfillment, and take those out and turn them into services, and service-oriented, it's a terrible word to do, isn't it? To sew at that and effectively plug that into the journey. It's where I've come from in Tesco's. Most of my last year there was actually turning what were really difficult and tough legacy systems into internet API-enabled services. But then it allows you to build once, allows you to deploy many times. Another key area that I think has been slightly neglected at Immediate is the customer focus. Not the customer focus from a design perspective. Design is something that we all focus hard on, nor on the copy side. You know, people write articles because they know what their audience is. But what we haven't done is a great job of tracking and using customer information to create great experiences for customers. And when you move into the e-commerce world, that's fundamentally important. We're already doing it from an advertising perspective. You know, we're all looking for more segmentation of audiences. We're all looking to find things like intent so that we can get more valuable advertising propositions. But building that wholly into your platform strategy is a fundamental part of becoming an e-commerce player. You know, you look more and more. I challenge you to find an e-commerce platform where you don't have even the basics around, you know, people who bought this also bought this. You know, here's things I recommend for you. However, whether it's overt or not, it's a fundamental part of building your e-commerce platform. We've captured customer data and we've used it for subscriptions and CRM type marketing. We haven't used it in our content platforms. And that really feeds into the data piece, where there's a big piece around data. You know, we've used a lot of our data is either used for advertising or it's used to acquire more subscriptions or for marketing purposes. The trick now is to bring in all our traffic analysis, marry that up with our customer data so that we can really come up with a real-time decision around, you know, personalizing content and personalizing product. And then finally, we've got a big focus on capability. I'm a strong believer. Funnily enough, I go back 20 years from my first offshoring opportunity. But I've, you know, rapidly over the years, I've come to believe, and I really believe when you're doing something big like this, that you need in-house, onshore capability to get it going, to build a tech culture in your business. And that's what we're committed to. In terms of timelines, just to kind of give you a flavour of where we are, it's very high level. We've spent last year, and probably the year before really, turning our publishing platforms into things that are fully responsive, fully mobile, fully multi-channel. We've bought e-commerce and marketplace products. We've bought that capability. We've spent a lot of effort building our subscriptions database and our CRM capabilities. And we've, you know, invested heavily in internal product management disciplines, design, UX, and agile development. Going forward, from the publishing world, as I said, we're standardizing on a single platform. That allows us to be far more innovative around ad innovations, because we create a dedicated team for building out ad products that can plug into a standard platform, everyone gets it. From a commerce perspective, as I said, you know, we're extending the marketplace already. So we're taking wedding venues and we're including all sorts of other suppliers in there now. We're extending the product range around Jewelry Maker, no doubt, into other lines of business. But the trick beyond that, as I said, is to make sure that you take all those commerce opportunities and put it in your content. I mean, the way I describe it is just you want the ability to put the buy button on virtually any piece of content you've got. As I said, there's got to be a big focus on single sign-on and customer. Really difficult in a multi-brand world. That's one of the biggest things that I found difficult coming from Tesco's, where you've got a unifying brand. You've got lots of different brands, but you've got a unifying brand around Tesco. So people are used to having a Tesco identity and a Tesco account. We are working very hard to track people behind the scenes, but at the same time give people individual credentials against brand. As I said, we're completing the data picture. And then from a capability perspective, we carry on investing in our people and building out great tech capability. In summary, because I'm just about to run out of time. In summary, when you've got there and you've joined up all these pieces, the commerce world and the content world, what you've got is customers not just coming to you for content. They're coming to you because they want to do something, whether that's planning a wedding, whether that's just planning a wedding, or it's because they're doing a craft project. When they're coming to do that craft project or plan that wedding, they want to buy product. And you've got that product there to serve them. That's when you've turned your customers for content into consumers for your e-commerce products. Thank you.